Alright. I should be live. I always have to check. I always have to check over here. Okay, I did check. Awesome. Awesome. What's up, y'all? This is Demand360 coming at you with probably the last MCU video for a while because I literally erased so many MCU videos to focus on Versus series and What If. The What If series is actually coming. There's a lot more to the Versus, not the Versus series, the What If series coming, the continuation series. We do have a lot more. I actually have episodes 2 and 3 already completely written. I'm actually writing 4. For some reason, I just haven't got around to recording either of them. And yeah. So they are coming really quickly. But today, I want to talk about the MCU. Because I've ranked the MCU before. I ranked it a long time ago. A lot of opinions have changed. And we also have a lot more projects that I haven't discussed yet. Mainly Multiverse of Madness and Moon Knight. I have talked a little bit about Hawkeye and Spider-Man No Way Home, as well as Eternals, but I haven't outright ranked them. And today, we're doing something a little different, because we aren't just ranking the MCU on a tier list. We are outright ranking them from best to worst, or worst to best. We are going from my absolute least favorite, and we are going to my favorite. We're just using a tier list to make things easier, and also we're live streaming it rather than just recording it, so we can have, fun conversation and discuss these movies and shows. So, it is ranked worst to best. Obviously, the tiers kind of fluctuate. It kind of depends on my overall feelings on them. So the ones that I genuinely do not like are the worst. The ones that are alright are alright. The good, the great, the awesome, and the all-time. It just works like that, okay? Who am I to judge? So I actually have my ranking. Multiverse of Madness is extremely new, so I'm going to avoid talking spoilers with it the best I can. Moon Knight is also pretty recent, but yeah. Moon Knight's also pretty recent, but Moon Knight is also a Disney Plus show, so I feel like more people have seen it. So we won't go into too big of spoilers, but we won't be shying away with Moon Knight because most people should have seen it. Anyway, if you have comments, if you have discussion, bring it up. And yeah, let's start off again. All my opinion. None of this is objective. All of it is subjective. There will be controversial takes. I guarantee you there will be controversial takes today. I'm going to try and be brief with some of them, but the ones I do genuinely want to talk about, I genuinely want to talk about. So, all right, I'm pulling up my ranking. All right, so in last place, this has been my last place since I watched it, and it just genuinely has not changed. And that is, of course, Thor: The Dark World. Last place, absolutely. I've trash talked it before. I will trash talk it again because it genuinely. The movie itself, as an overall plot, is not great, but it's not terrible. The thing about this movie that makes it the worst for me is that it's so boring. These are supposed to be action movies. Why am I being boarded out by them? And now I would like to say, I want to be able to say that the performances were amazing. But even the performances sucked. Like, you have Anthony Hopkins in the movie, and he sucks. And he's a legendary actor. The only performance that genuinely feels like alive is Tom Hiddleston. And let's be real, Tom Hiddleston is probably the most devoted actor to the MCU. So no matter what script you give him, you're going to get an amazing performance out of him because he is one of the most dedicated to character actors I've ever seen. Not only with Loki, but if you've seen him in I Saw the Light, the story of Hank Williams, the movie sucks, but he gets so dedicated to that role that he just nails it. So Hiddleston is like a very dedicated to character actor, and he even shines at several points in this movie. But honestly, apart from the Loki scenes, this movie really doesn't have much. The villain, Malakith. Oh, I hate Malakith. Malakith and Carly from Falcon and Winter Soldier are the two worst villains in the MCU. Malakith isn't even the biggest threat in his own movie. And that's really disappointing. Because the other guy, Curse, I think his name is Curse, does more in the movie than Malakith. Malakith has no personality. Malakith's personality is represented throughout the film. There is none. And you know what? That's all I'm going to say about Thor the Dark World, because I want to get more and more with this list. Leave your own thoughts and feelings about Thor the Dark World, because I don't like it. In what number of place? There's too many MCU properties. Next, we'll just say next, is another kind of obvious one, The Incredible Hulk. I definitely would rather watch this one over Thor the Dark World. The thing about this movie, and the why it's so low for me, is because I don't feel like it connects with the rest of the MCU. Like, I know Abomination came back for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I know he came back, but even then, this movie feels so disconnected. And maybe it's because it was Edward Norton as Hulk and not Mark Ruffalo. Maybe it was that. But for some reason, this movie just doesn't feel like an MCU movie. I don't get it, but for some reason, it doesn't. And I don't know, it feels like it's part of like that part of Marvel, like the X-Men and the Raimi Spider-Man movies, where it's like, it's there, it's Marvel, but is it really MCU? That's just the feeling that I get watching the movie. But you know what? You do, you guys. So, next up, another movie I don't want to spend too much time on, but it's Ant-Man and the Wasp. This movie, to me, it feels like filler. It feels like a giant filler movie. And I didn't come to watch filler. Like, I don't feel like I got anything out of watching this movie. It just kind of feels like, oh, hey, we need to make another Ant-Man movie, and we need him to be in the quantum realm for End Game. Let's just do a couple hours of him doing random stuff, and then have a cool post-credit scene. And I don't feel like this movie did anything. It didn't impact. It didn't have any character moments. It was just kind of the characters running around with like a billion different plot lines and just wrapping them up one by one. Like, they should have just stuck with one, but they gave us like 4, and the movie just kind of feels like this chaotic, fillery mess. Overall, not a favorite of mine. Not a favorite. Okay, let's get into the next tier, and people might not be happy with this one. Actually, I feel like people will be, but I'm going to give it to Captain Marvel for the 4th worst. And I'm going to put it in all right, because I don't outright hate this movie. I don't hate it to the same degree as others, but I certainly am not a fan of it. I think the biggest reason why this movie is in all right and not worst is because Samuel L. Jackson is in the movie, and Samuel L. Jackson is like my favorite actor of all time. I love him so much. So Yeah, that's kind of the reason why Captain Marvel is higher. Brie Larson doesn't have a whole lot of emotion in the role, which is kind of sad. I would have wanted more of a character out of the main character. I don't think I didn't feel satisfied when everything like worked out and she got all her powers and she was like super OP. When she gets her powers, it just kind of feels way too OP. I don't feel like there was a proper character arc. I didn't feel like there was a journey with Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. The Skrulls were pretty cool. The Skrulls were more of a positive thing in the movie, and I would just rather we have a Skrull Nick Fury versus the Skrulls. I would have wished this movie happened without Captain Marvel. I actually think it would have been better without the main character. And that's just not something you can be having, right? So, anyway, moving on. Next up, Black Widow. Ooh, this movie. This movie hurts because it could have been so great. It just isn't. And it's really heartbreaking because it really could have been a great movie and it isn't. The thing about Black Widow is not only is it way too late to make a Black Widow movie after she's already dead, it's that they picked the weirdest spot of the MCU to make a Black Widow prequel film. Why didn't they explore her time as an assassin under Dreykov for Russia? Why didn't we explore her joining S.H.I.E.L.D., meeting Clint Barton and joining S.H.I.E.L.D.? Maybe you could have had it during that time between Winter Soldier and Age of Ultron and Civil War, and you got her philosophy from like literally telling the government to kiss her ass to actually fessing up to them in Civil War. Why did they choose after Civil War? It was a really, really weird time spot that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And honestly, this movie didn't feel like it needed to happen in a lot of ways. Taskmaster is a serious waste of a villain. He's such a waste. And it's really disappointing because she shouldn't have been such a waste. Dreykov, why? Why is he even in the movie? He doesn't matter. Honestly, the only thing in this movie that was not either painfully mediocre, weird, or just blatantly not good was Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova. Her performance is the only thing in this film that is not better than absolutely mediocre. Because 90% of this movie is absolutely mediocre. That's the best ranking I can give it besides Florence Pugh. And that's really sad because this movie had so much potential that it could have explored and then it didn't. So, disappointing. Next up, we have Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 suffers from the same things as Ant-Man and the Wasp in that it tries to do so much with so little, and it ends up feeling like a jumbled mess. They gave it like 4 storylines. Not all of them were necessary. Well, in fact, a lot of them weren't necessary. And the movie feels overstuffed in a way that it really shouldn't feel overstuffed. Both of the villains don't matter. Like, they don't leave an impact on the movie. In fact, I can't even remember who the freaking guy with the glasses, the business rival. I don't even know who he is. I don't even remember. That can tell you something about the villain. It introduced War Machine and Black Widow. That's cool. But, like, apart from that, this movie didn't do a whole bunch. So, yeah. All right, next we have the first Thor movie. Thor is all right. I gotta say, Thor's really unlikable at the beginning of this movie, and I know that's the point. So I'm not gonna give it too much crap for that. But dear God, he's annoying. The bleached eyebrows are really weird. They're really weird, actually. I just really did not enjoy them. Loki as a villain worked. I think he really worked for this movie. Again, Hiddleston is so dedicated to every character he plays, and you can feel it in his performances. In this movie, I feel like the actors were genuinely trying, unlike in Thor: The Dark World. It really felt like everyone was trying. So Hiddleston still stood out a lot for his performance. So, congrats to him. I do like the feel of Asgard in this movie. They did a very good job with that. Overall, this movie has a really weird romance plot that just no thank you. No thank you. Please, no. The movie is like, it has a solid arc. It's just kind of like boring, overly Shakespearean, sometimes overly dramatic with a really weird romance that really pushes it down. But at the heart of it is a solid hero origin story. So I can't give it too many craps. Now this one's going to piss some people off. I know it's going to piss a lot of people off. Spider-Man Homecoming. The thing is about this movie is I genuinely don't know why it's this low on the list. Like, I just don't enjoy this movie, and I'm not fully sure I understand why. Like, this movie genuinely has some great moments in it. Genuinely great moments. Like, the Vulture finding out who Peter Parker is an amazing scene. The reveal of the Vulture being Liz's dad are both incredible. Vulture as a villain is very memorable. Vulture is probably one of the best parts of the movie. Michael Keaton is by far one of the best parts of the movie. I will say this, of the 3 live-action Spider-Men, Tom Holland is my least favorite. But that doesn't really affect the movie because I love all 3 of them. I don't hate any of them. In fact, I genuinely love all 3 of them. Quite a bit. So, I think I'm not a big fan of Karen, the AI. I don't really enjoy how the suit just kind of has all these web mechanics. I mean, of course, they do make Peter have to go back to his homemade suit. I don't know. This movie, whenever I watch it, I don't enjoy it. I'm just like, all right, it's on. Like, I genuinely don't know why I don't like it. I just don't. So, yeah, if you like it, that's good. I'm glad you got more enjoyment out of it. And I really don't mean to sour your tastes. Next up, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Oh, no, Guardians of the Galaxy is here. I want to save tears. I used to love this movie, but the more I watch it, the less I like it. And I think the reason I don't like it as much is because the entire third act of the movie feels like a CGI cluster F. Like, it doesn't even feel like the character. All of the scenes on Ego's planet feel so overly CGI that it's just like, I don't like looking at it. Like, visually, it just feels weird to me every time they're on Ego's planet. I like what they explored with Star-Lord and Ego, and I like exploring the Celestials. Do not take my words out of context, by the way. Don't you dare. But honestly, like, I feel like a lot of this movie, a lot of the characters didn't have a whole bunch to do. Like, the jokes in this movie were not as funny as the ones in the first one. They were more overt and weird, and they just weren't as funny. While, like, I think James Gunn leaned too much into the dirty, and it just did not come out as funny. It's like, okay, it's way more over the top. It's not as subtle. It's not as random. It's just, why? Ego was a fine villain. He served his purpose, and he was good for this movie. Yondu's probably the best part of the movie. I'll say that. Anyway, we have a lot of movies and shows, so let's keep going. Okay, next we have our first Disney Plus show, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Carly Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers is an absolute terrible group of villains on the same tier as Malakith. Get them out of here. No, what do you want from me? You want me to sympathize with them, and then they blow up a building, and they're looked at as bad guys. But then we're supposed to sympathize with them, and then they kill Lamar, and then they're supposed to be sympathetic for it. Like, they just keep going back and forth and back and forth. It's like, what do you want out of me? Do you want me to hate them or sympathize with them? Because you want me to do both, and I can't do both. Like, you're not supposed to do both. Bucky, why was Bucky even in the show, to be honest? Like, half the time, I don't even know why he was supposed to be in the show. Zemo felt really out of place, especially compared to where he was in Captain America Civil War. He just felt so out. It felt like a variant. It felt like a multiversal variant of the character, not the Zemo I remember from Civil War. Sharon Carter was weird. And then Falcon and John Walker, they were probably the only good things about the show. Sam's arc, and John Walker played a really good anti-hero. That's all I have to say about it. Next up, Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3. This movie really does something that originally I didn't like, and the more as I've gotten older, I think I've come to appreciate what this movie was going for. It was trying to explore, what is Tony Stark without the suit? Is Iron Man just a suit, or is it Tony Stark? And I think this movie tackles that in a very interesting way. It really explores Tony Stark's psyche after the first Avengers movie, and has a really strong topic about anxiety, which, as someone who struggles with it, I think I've come to appreciate and respect. Not only the writing with it, but also Robert Downey Jr.'s performance with it. So I respect that. I think really the things that I don't like about Iron Man 3 have to do with Aldrich Killian. And I think the whole thing with the president and the plane thing and the Iron Patriot, it just feels so out of place. Like, it feels like a Shane Black action movie packed in with a genuine character arc for Tony Stark. Like, I think this movie would have honestly worked better as a spy thriller, with Tony Stark not having the suit, trying to find his way home, and ultimately kind of catching on to Killian's plot and slowly sneaking up on him. Where I think the whole, oh my god, they're holding the president hostage, I don't know, it just felt so out of line with the other MCU movies. It felt like really over the top and like weird. I don't really hate Ben Kingsley. Shang-Chi did a lot to change that for me. So there you go. And I mean, I do like the final fight with all the suits. That was pretty cool. So this movie has a lot to like in it, but also has a lot I don't like in it. And now we're going to get to a movie that I feel the exact same way about. And that is Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home is a movie that really is 50-50 for me. It's such a 50-50 movie. It is a... Nope, no comments. Okay, that's okay. It's a 50-50 movie. And the reason it's a 50-50 movie is because I love the Mysterio and the character arc for Peter Parker and the illusions and the elementals and the drones. And then I hate the high school rom-com. Ugh. Overly awkward. A lot of the humor feels forced. And honestly, it just... You know what? I am going to go this far. I'm actually going to put Iron Man 3 and Spider-Man Far From Home in the good tier. But dear, like, half this movie is good. Half of it I hate. Mysterio is great. Spider-Man's great. Illusions, Nick Fury, Shield but not Shield, Maria Hill, all that is great. The romance feels too awkward, like weirdly awkward, awkwardly forced, and then a lot of the humor just does not work for this movie. I don't really want to talk about it that much. I want to keep moving. So next, we have a movie that I really don't have anything bad about it to say, and that's Ant-Man. I don't really have anything outright negative apart from the fact that Yellow Jacket was a pretty non-memorable villain. But that's about it. This movie is genuinely not that bad. But I also don't think there's a lot of great things about it. Like, it's a pretty average Marvel film for me. It's pretty average. It kind of just feels like an average superhero origin story with a heist movie. Luis, hilarious. Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, brilliant. Like, brilliant. So Michael Douglas, brilliant. Villain, kind of boring. Kind of trash, actually. So, this movie, to me, it also doesn't have as much of an emotional side to it. I mean, it does with the Pims and what happened to Hope Van Dyne. No, not Hope. Hope is the daughter. Who's the wife? Who's Hank Pym's wife? It's not Hope. Okay, leave it in the comments because I don't remember. Janet. It's Janet Van Dyne. That's who it is, not Hope. Okay, see, this is how mediocre the movie is. No, I'm not going to crap on the movie. I don't know. This movie just feels like whenever I watch it, it's more like, yo, it's on, so I'll watch it. But it doesn't feel like anything truly like that. Okay, next we have the next show, and that's What If. Now, What If has some genuinely amazing episodes. The Doctor Strange episode, the Ultron, Star-Lord T'Challa, the finale. The finale is just genuinely epic. With all the multiversal characters coming together to fight Ultron. It was amazing. But then you have episodes like Party Thor. And the, what was the other one that was not that good? I was not a big fan of the Zombies one or the Killmonger episode. They were just kind of weird. Some of the episodes were really forgettable. And some of them were amazing. That's why it's really in the middle here. The episodes that were amazing really stand out as amazing. But I feel like they were so few and far between compared to episodes that were either mediocre or just outright bad that I have to put it a little lower. Speaking of the multiverse, up next is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That's right. It is like 15 out of 30. This was a movie that I was so genuinely hyped for. I was so genuinely believing that this movie could have made here, and I do think it could have. I'm not going to go too far into spoilers because the movie is so recent. But this movie had so much potential that I think was pushed away. And the best way that I can describe this movie is to call it the Last Jedi of the MCU. That's what I just called it, and that's what I'm going to call it. It is the Last Jedi of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now let's talk about the good. So for the good, the performances are all 10 out of 10. Everybody gives a 10 out of 10 performance in this movie. Elizabeth Olsen deserves an Oscar for this movie. Her performance is simply nothing short of incredible. The visuals, the directing style, Sam Raimi really leans in to the Evil Dead and the horror elements. And the visuals and the directorial parts of this movie are genuinely fantastic. The camera angles and the CGI and the practical effects, the good balance was fantastic. The tone, yeah, it had some genuinely brutal and horrific moments. But those are the good things. But now it's time to talk about the bad things. Number one, and the biggest problem with this movie is not only the characterization, but the absolutely messy as hell rushed script. The characterization of Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, is a complete disservice to not only the character herself, but everything that was established in WandaVision. And dare I even say it, the difference between Wanda Maximoff in WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness is the same difference between Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi compared to The Last Jedi. Yeah, I went there. I just went there. And I don't take it back. It's just the truth. I would also like to mention that this script is messy. It really feels like a tug of war between Feige and Raimi. Raimi wanted to do his own thing. He even admitted to not watching WandaVision. He already admitted, which is really evident when you watch the movie, because he clearly doesn't know what he's doing with the character. Anyway, it really feels like he doesn't really give a damn about the other movies and is kind of doing his own thing, which can be respectable from time to time. In this case, it does not work because Feige is giving him all the stuff he has to put in the movie, and Raimi saying, yeah, okay, and then gets rid of it as soon as he puts it in. I'm talking about the cameos. They really didn't even need to do reshoots because the cameos are gone as soon as they are introduced. They're introduced, and then not even 5 minutes later, they're all dead. I'm sorry, that was a massive spoiler, but it's true. Like, the reshoots weren't even necessary. They might as well not have even happened because they don't matter. Yeah, they were just cameos. But honestly, their presence in the movie is so undermined and so low that it might as well not have even happened. Another thing I would like to talk about is the emotional beats. Oh, wait, there aren't any. Well, there are about 2 in the entire movie. There are maybe 2 emotional beats in the whole movie. This entire movie is just one giant running chase. The movie has bad pacing problems. It is either too slow or too fast. There is no balance. It goes from one thing to another without time to breathe. And there's no time for character development. There's no time for characterization. There's no time for any of it. And it was no. I love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies. Do you know why I love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies? Is because of the characterization, the time that each scene, that each film took to improve the characters, to show their humanity, to show their arcs. Doc Ock and Green Goblin are two of the best villains that Raimi ever made in a superhero movie. But in terms of the character development that he gives Scarlet Witch, I would put her on the same tier as Topher Grace's Venom, with the amount of characterization she has in this movie. Because all she is in this movie is a characterless Terminator. She's basically Terminator without a character. And it's sad to see. Elizabeth Olsen really nails the performance. And it's amazing, considering she had so little to work with, how amazing of a performance she was able to give. This movie had so many moments where it should have worked. And in my opinion, I think a lot of it did, and a lot of it did not. We're going to move on now because I feel like I've been ranting about this movie for a really long time. It's because it's the newest, and a lot of parts of it left a sour taste in my mouth. So I had a lot to talk about it, with it being the most recent Marvel movie I've seen. Hopefully future rewatches can change that, but who knows. Next up, Captain America, the First Avenger. I have a soft spot for this movie, y'all. I really do have a soft spot for it. It truly is. It truly is just a nice little movie. It's a great superhero origin story. Well, partially copying Iron Man's without copying Iron Man's. Steve Rogers just makes for such a fun protagonist. Someone who, has been constantly fascinated with World War II. In history, I really liked it. Red Skull, maybe not the most developed villain, but I think he served in this movie. I think the characterization, Multiverse of Madness, was really good. I think each character had a really solid amount of characterization and humanity to them that I could care about. So overall, the movie's good. It's similar to Ant-Man in the fact that it's good, but I wouldn't call it great. So, but hey, one thing about this movie is that it is the weakest of the Captain America trilogy, and it is still pretty good. Because the next two Captain America movies are nothing short of incredible. Spoiler alert, they will be much higher on the list. Both of them will be, actually. Both of them will be. All right. Next up, we have the Avengers. This movie used to be so incredible, and then they made Civil War, and Winter Soldier, and Infinity War, and End Game, and now this movie just kind of feels kind of average. It doesn't feel average. It feels really good. And there's still a lot to like about this movie. First of all, Loki is an amazing villain. Again, I can't praise Hiddleston enough. I'll praise him more when we get to Loki. But, again, he's incredible. In fact, all of the performances were really good with this movie. There wasn't really a single bad performance. The way they established the Avengers, it worked. They did a really good job with it. The third act is an incredible action sequence. The only really things I don't enjoy about this movie are the visuals. The visuals look really bad at times. Like, the lighting is really bad. And it just kind of feels bland. But that's really the only genuine hatred I have for this movie. And it's not even a hatred, it's more like a critique. So yeah, let's move on. Ooh, all right. Next up, this is gonna make some people angry, and I don't mean for it to make people angry. This movie, for some reason, has just never stuck out to me in the way that others have. Black Panther. I do really like Black Panther. I know there's going to be an entire hate mob coming for me, but I do genuinely like it. I just don't like it as much as other people. This movie did a lot right. Most notably, world building and characterization. The characterization, not just for T'Challa, but for Okoye, Killmonger, Nakia, Shuri, was all incredible. They did such a good job making sure each and every character mattered, that their character arcs and personalities mattered, that making them unique and special, making everybody different, mattered. And I have to respect that. Killmonger is a legendary, top-tier MCU villain. Top tier. The only real gripes I have with this movie are the wobbly CGI and the fact that T'Challa didn't feel like the main character of his own movie. But that's really it. I do like how the villain really changes the hero's motives. Killmonger really forces T'Challa to see the world in a new light, and I think that's so interesting. It was such an interesting and unique choice. I really respect it. I really respect it. The world building of Wakanda and the vibranium works really good. And that's another thing that I don't like about this movie is the fact that vibranium is basically a plot armor tool. They kind of treat it like a plot armor tool, and I gotta say I'm not a fan. So, there you go. But anyway, let's move on. Oh, we have another controversial takeover here. You're not gonna like it. But you know what? You can't stop me. How about Eternals in the great tier? That's right. Come after me, I dare you. Fight me. Because I genuinely like Eternals. Yes, there are a lot of problems with it. I agree with you. But I like it. And you can't tell me I can't. So first of all, I think this movie would have been way better as a Disney Plus show. I think if we had a Disney Plus show, each episode focusing on a certain Eternal as the story kind of brought them all together for the final act, I think this Eternals would have been way better. As a movie, I think it's kind of weird that we technically never had all of the Eternals in the same place at once because Gilgamesh dies before Phastos is even introduced, as well as Ajak. Ajak is also killed before Phastos even joins the story, before Gilgamesh even joins the story. So it's kind of weird, but I love the characterization, the visuals, and the themes. That is why this movie is so high. Is because we're dealing with basically gods. Not gods in the same way as the Celestials or the Asgardians, but like these super powered, enhanced people who have lived since the dawn of Earth, since the Mesopotamia era, up until current day. They've watched humanity grow and evolve. They've witnessed every single war. They've seen every single country be formed and built. They've seen everything while standing on Earth, and many of them have come to question it. Some wonder if all the destruction and violence is worth it. And then they're all faced with an impossible choice that a celestial is going to destroy the Earth by being born. And they have to choose, is humanity worth saving? And to me, that is such an interesting idea. That is such an interesting philosophy. And I think this movie handled it very well. The visuals are incredible. That's just a fact. This movie has so many beautiful visuals. And so many of the characters are so memorable. Kingo, Druig is my favorite. But Kingo, Icarus, Cersei, Thena, Makari, Gilgamesh, they are so memorable. Each of them brings something unique and special to the team, not just with their powers, but with their personalities. The exploration of the Celestials, an even deeper dive into the Celestials, is so interesting. So interesting and so unique. And so, I have to put it here. The issues with the movie is that it really should have been a Disney Plus show. It at times fails to properly introduce characters before thrusting them into battle. Maybe there were too many characters for one movie. All of them were supposed to be leads. And yeah, this movie felt really long at some points. There were times where this movie felt like it dragged for its length. Oh, we're just going to hit y'all with the controversial opinions today. Because up next, we have Avengers End Game. I used to trash End Game a lot harder than this. And I've since mellowed out. But it's still only great. This film has some of the best moments in the entire MCU. Tony Stark's death, in my opinion, is perfect. You couldn't change it for me. You couldn't give Tony Stark a better death than Avengers End Game. There was nothing I would change about that scene. It is genuinely amazing. Cap lifting the hammer is a fan service moment, but it is epic. The portal sequence is epic. The final battle is epic. I'm just not a big fan of time travel movies. I really don't enjoy time travel movies, and that's really my biggest thing with this movie, is that I feel like the time travel felt like forced fan service at times. And I think Endgame would have worked better as a multiverse movie than Multiverse of Madness. Imagine if the Avengers had to go to alternate realities and see alternate futures to get the Infinity Stones in a multiverse. That would have been so much more interesting than cheap fan service. What if they all went to multiverses that all forced them to make the decisions? What if Tony Stark saw a superior Iron Man and saw the more self-obsessed way of viewing things, which caused him to make his final sacrifice? Maybe he met his father in that reality, and his father was disagreeing with Tony's mindset. Who knows? Anyway, again, this movie has grown on me, but we still have quite a few more movies I want to talk about, so I'm not going to talk about them now. All right, next we have Hawkeye. This show was just an overall solid watch. Kate and Clint were both amazing. Yelena was a fantastic introduction. Echo was a really solid villain. Kingpin is one of the bigger flaws of this because of the fact, especially with Multiverse of Madness out being so brutal, why couldn't they make Kingpin brutal? They can make Multiverse of Madness brutal, but not Kingpin. Okay. That's really the only genuine critique. The LARPing was fun. I don't think it needed to be so integral to the story, but it was fun. Overall, the series was fun. I think that's the best way I can describe it. It was fun. Next up, we have the newest Disney Plus show, and that's Moon Knight. Moon Knight is not fun, but it's really good. The exploration of DID, character trauma, Egyptian gods. The way they handle Egyptian gods are amazing. Like, you can tell that the director was Egyptian, because he was. He really did a good job with that. The tomb raiding felt like Indiana Jones mixed with Batman. Oh, that's what this show felt like, but Batman with DID. This show on paper should have been an action show, but it was a psychological character examination of both Stephen Grant and Mark Spector with an exploration of Egyptian history, and I think that is so cool. So much cooler than we give it credit for. So, there we go. I'm just gonna let y'all watch Moon Knight. You gotta watch it for yourself to truly believe me. Alright, now we're getting into the awesome. We got Age of Ultron. Another controversial take. To me, Age of Ultron, I think Ultron is such an interesting idea as a villain, being the anti-Tony Stark. The introduction to Wanda, Pietro, and Vision, fantastic. Action sequences are all fantastic. Joss Whedon really upped his ante with the visuals on this movie. And again, Ultron brings up that same thematic tone as Eternals. Is humanity worth saving? Except Ultron came up with his opinion pretty quick, which is kind of sad. But okay. So, I would even argue that Wanda was a better villain in Age of Ultron than she was in Multiverse of Madness, but we don't need to have that discussion just yet. Alright, let's move in. We have 11 more. So, just below the top 10, just below, is going to be Iron Man 1. Amazing introduction. Such a good introduction. Oh my god, it's so good. Robert Downey Jr. kills his performance. So good. I know we're so used to Don Cheadle, but Terrence Howard really nailed James Rhodes, or War Machine. Nailed it. Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. I love the whole opening when Tony and Yinsen are in the cave and they're developing the first Iron Man suit. It's so disturbing, but so incredible and powerful of a scene. I do really, really like it. Tony's character arc, the beginning of Tony's character arc, I should say, for the entire MCU, is nothing short of incredible. It is such an amazing hero's journey, watching Stark become Iron Man. And I love it. Obadiah Stane's probably the weakest part of the movie, but even then, I don't really hate him all that much. I just don't understand why he was evil from the beginning. But you know what? And the Ironmonger thing felt a little forced. But you know what? They needed to introduce Iron Man against a villain somehow. They might as well have done it that way. So, alright, next is a movie that originally was a lot higher, but has lowered for me just slightly. Thor Ragnarok. This movie is hilarious. It's hilarious. The only thing about it is that I think a lot of the emotional scenes are undercut for comedy. And I don't think, in the same way that all of the emotional scenes in Multiverse of Madness were cut for action, this was cut for comedy. The main difference between Ragnarok and Multiverse of Madness is that Ragnarok still took the time to have those character moments, to have those character arcs, and it also never character assassinated anybody. Multiverse of Madness did do that. It did do character assassination, and it didn't take the time to have those moments that Ragnarok did. Again, the performances here are incredible. Chris Hemsworth is on his A game. Hiddleston is as incredible as ever. Again, Hela is such a good villain. She really stands out. Is she a better villain than Loki? I don't know. Loki was a pretty good villain. I don't know. Might have to think about that. But she crushes Malakith as a villain. I think we all agree there. I don't know. She was a very interesting idea. Valkyrie was a really great new addition. And yeah, I can't wait to see what Taika has up his sleeve for the next Thor movie. Next up, we have a movie that is new to Phase 4. This was a movie I had no hype for, thinking, all right, I'll watch it. And then I got out of the theater. I'm like, oh my god, I love it. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie surprised me on such a deep level. I was so genuinely shocked by it. I was so shocked. But it's so good. Wenwu is an amazing villain. Don't tell me otherwise, because he is truly amazing. Shang-Chi is an amazing protagonist. I love the topics of trauma and family. I think this movie handles them very well. The Ten Rings are such an interesting kind of fighting style. I love the hand-to-hand stuff, fighting, because it feels real. The fights feel real, like people are actually getting hit. And I love that. Maybe we could have used a little less CGI at the end, but even that wasn't too bad. Honestly, this movie had everything for a superhero origin story, and I love that. It makes it truly stand out. That is why it is this high. And next, we have another superhero origin story that originally was a lot lower, but has since gotten much higher. The first Doctor Strange movie. Now, I had to watch this movie twice in a matter of 2 days. One, because I wanted to get ready for Multiverse of Madness, despite how far away it was. And because I found out my dad had never seen the first Doctor Strange movie, so walking into Multiverse of Madness would likely not make sense. Don't worry, he wouldn't have missed much, because Multiverse of Madness didn't even seem to care that there was a first Doctor Strange movie. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop crapping on Multiverse of Madness, despite how incredibly deserving the movie was at times. Anyway, the first Doctor... Honestly, Shang-Chi and Doctor Strange, they could go back to back. They could. But we're going to put them here, because I said so. Now, I love the mystical elements of the MCU. I love the sorcery. I love the magic. I love the exploration of sorcerers and wizards and witches. I love it. I love it so much. It's probably my favorite thing in the MCU, and Doctor Strange has the heaviest focus on it of any Marvel property, and I love it. I think the characterization of Stephen... This is basically Iron Man, but with sorcery. Again, Caecilius is a pretty trash villain, but you know what? This movie has some of my favorite MCU moments. Ancient One's death, when she and Stephen Strange have that final conversation about death. Death gives life meaning. And the Dormammu I've come to bargain scene are two of my favorite MCU moments ever. Stephen Strange's character arc, him getting the cloak of levitation. This movie does such a good job of balancing action as well as world building as well as character. Just like Shang-Chi. Actually, both movies do a really good job of that. Having character, drama, action, comedy, and world building. The only reason Doctor Strange is higher is because I'm just more invested in the mystical side of the MCU. Shang-Chi will probably get higher up there. I do want to see more of that world and that side of the MCU that Shang-Chi brought. I do genuinely want to see more of it. I've just seen more in the mystical realm. And maybe that's why I prefer Doctor Strange. So, anyway. Next up, we have the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Oh, this is a classic. This is a classic film. I know a lot of MCU fans like this one. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn had an almost impossible task to basically do the Avengers, but with a bunch of characters that nobody knew who they were. Even comic book readers didn't really know who they were. As well as none of them had movies setting them up. And James Gunn did it. He did it. And he succeeded. He did very good. I mean, it's number 8 on this list. 7 or 8. So it clearly got pretty high on the list. And it got very good praise from me. It is getting good praise from me. This movie has such a good balance of all of the characters, action, humor, drama, character. You can be cracking up to sobbing over Groot's death. And I think that's so special. This movie is an emotional roller coaster, and I love it. I love how it does that. Ronan is not the best villain. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Because the rest of the movie is just so high tier that it doesn't even matter that Ronan isn't that bad of a good of a villain. And he isn't even that bad. He's not Malakith. He's not Carly Morgenthau. I'd put him on the same tier as Obadiah Stane. He was fine. Ronan had some badass moments, though. Let's not take that away from him. He did. So, Guardians of the Galaxy is an amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Let's move on. All right, the final tier. Next up, Spider-Man: No Way Home. This is how you do a multiverse movie. Sam Raimi should have taken his notes. But this movie, Spider-Man: No Way Home, is what I hoped for Multiverse of Madness. Multiverse of Madness was what I feared No Way Home would become, and it didn't become that. Multiverse of Madness did become that, but not Spider-Man: No Way Home. I was really worried that this movie was going to be a fan service cluster F. That it was going to be filled with cameos that meant nothing to the movie, and that it was going to be a generic action movie. I was very wrong. This movie brought in the villains from the original Maguire and Garfield movies, and in some ways improved them. Electro was seriously improved. Green Goblin didn't really need to be improved, but he was improved anyway. I think Doc Ock wasn't as good in this movie as he was in Spider-Man 2, but he was still a welcome addition to the movie. His fight with Spider-Man on the bridge is really, really well done. Lizard and Sandman are really the only villains that don't matter, but they aren't even bad. They aren't even bad. The characterization of Tom Holland's Peter Parker, the character arc they make him go through, and the fact that they didn't just bring in the other two Spider-Man as worthless cameos and actually made them part of the plot and the character arcs, not only for Tom Holland's Peter Parker, but for each other, was such a brilliant stroke of genius. It was brilliant. Doctor Strange's inclusion was fine. You know, he was there. He was cool. And I mean, it made sense that he was part of it. The mirror dimension fight was cool. Yeah, Strange losing was kind of dumb. But you know what? I don't care. It doesn't matter. This movie, kind of messy at times. Visually not the most pleasing. Despite that one shot. The one shot of him looking at J. Jonah Jameson's recording in the rain was beautiful. But ultimately, this is what multiverse movies should be trying to achieve. Amazing cameos that maybe or maybe do not improve them. They need to improve the movie. And sometimes have a genuine impact on the movie. Especially like Toby and Andrew, because they did such a good job with that. Speaking of multiverse, again, we have Loki. Tom Hiddleston is the executive producer of his own show. And he's the lead actor. My God, does he deliver. He delivers so much. He knows Loki like I think he knows more about Loki than the comic writers who wrote Loki. The passion that he puts into his character with every scene, every facial expression, every word, every choice of words, every emotion is so good. He is one of the MCU's best actors. For the MCU, I wouldn't put him on the same tier as Michael Keaton or Anthony Hopkins or any genuinely legendary actors, but in terms of MCU stars, he really is up there. He really does make an effort. It's amazing to watch. The way they handled the Loki variants was also really cool. Were they cameos? Were they not? How would you describe the Loki variants? I don't know if they're necessarily cameos, more so than just multiversal variants. They were all great, though. Sylvie represents, in my opinion, the worst aspects of Loki, as well as Sylvie, in a way, represents what Loki's always desired, but also being the worst aspects of him that he has to grow up and evolve beyond. I think that is I think that's so special in the way that they do that. The final battle against Goliath, I love the battle against Goliath because it's so Loki. It's so Loki. You have an unstoppable force, but rather than fight it head on, they subvert it through trickery and magic. And I think that's such a Loki thing that it's low-key, get it, pun intended, brilliant. Bringing Kang the Conqueror in, I genuinely didn't think they were going to do it. I thought it was going to be another WandaVision thing where we were all going to be fooled. It was going to be a King Loki who's behind everything. And so I was trying not to get hyped with the Kang theories. And then he showed up. And he showed up and he made such an impression. He made such a good impression. Jonathan Majors really made a good impression with not just myself, but with fans all around. He did a really good job, and I can't wait to see where he goes down the line because he's going to be amazing. He is going to be amazing. I guarantee you. But this show just had so many really interesting things. The setting of the TVA was so interesting. The mystery, the action, the drama, the characterization, all of it was on point. The performances on point. The drama, the theoretical things. Again, similar to things like Eternals and Black Panther, this movie had such interesting thematics about free will versus chaos. Is order and control, is bureaucracy a thing we want if without it the whole world turns into chaos? It's an interesting philosophy, one that can go any way, but yeah, I can't wait for season 2. I hope it is treated with the same amount of respect as season 1 was. Next up, Captain America the Winter Soldier. An amazing spy thriller. I told you, the Captain America movies only get better from here. They really do. The action sequences are amazing. I love the highway fight between Cap and Bucky. It feels so real and nuanced and incredible. I love Steve trying to save Bucky in the end. It feels so Captain America-esque. And I love trying to see him find his way in the new world. Because in a lot of ways, he was a goody two-shoes being brought into a morally gray world. And I think that's so cool. Samuel L. Jackson's also in this movie, so that doubles its awesomeness. But it was already going to get this high on the list without him, so that's just a really good, that's a sign that this movie is really good. This movie just has so many good elements, but we've been talking for a really long time, so if we want to have a separate video about Winter Soldier, go ahead. Next up, we have Civil War. We have the next Captain America movie. This is just Avengers 2.5, and I love it. The final battle between Cap, Iron Man, and Bucky is amazing. The airport fight is incredible. Zemo really fits as a villain. I wish Falcon and the Winter Soldier watched Civil War before they made that show, where they put Zemo in there. This movie has so many interesting thematics that tie over from Winter Soldier. You could tell it was the same director because the Russo brothers did such a good job of making it feel like a genuine trilogy. But yeah, this movie really had everything. Let's just keep going. Number 2 is Infinity War. This movie should have been a cluster F, but it wasn't. Thanos, legendary villain, arguably the best villain of all time. Infinity War Thanos, not End Game Thanos. The way that the unique teams that they put together with this movie, the amazing and unique character interactions were also special. Action sequences were great. There were some perfect moments of humor. Just, God, this movie is so good. But number 1, maybe this is why I hate Multiverse of Madness as much as I do. I don't hate it, but I really don't like it. But number 1 is WandaVision. The characterization, the fact that they turned 2 of the biggest side characters into genuine characters is so interesting and so incredible. The exploration of Wanda's grief was truly an emotional roller coaster. The sitcom land. I love the sitcom land. I don't care what you tell me. Go ahead. Rage comment me in the chat. Go ahead. But I love the sitcom. I grew up with a lot of them with my grandparents and watching them. So I have a appreciation for them and a love and respect for them. This show tried to do things differently. It tried to do things differently, and I think it succeeded. All of the characters are memorable. Wanda, Vision, Agatha, Jimmy Woo, Monica, Darcy. Hayward, you're supposed to hate him. I hate him, but I'm supposed to hate him, so that's the point. The only real criticism I have about it is I don't think Wanda should have got away with the actions of taking Westview hostage. She shouldn't have got away with it. Granted, Multiverse of Madness does make sure she has consequences, but not for those actions, because those actions never happened, according to Multiverse of Madness. Well, they did, but she doesn't care. So I would have wished for that, but Wanda really coming into her own as a true self, rather than a side character, truly coming into her own as a main character, was so special and so powerful and so incredible. So that's going to do it because this is a really long video. So hopefully y'all enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.